Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at Morphy's with a Colt SMG, the original 9mm AR, developed in the 1980s. This was a period when there was a real proliferation of police SWAT team type units, and they were interested in submachine guns. Submachine gun was becoming a very popular, essential item in any sort of high-end law enforcement unit. And Colt realized they didn't really have one. Now, Colt absolutely dominated the carbine market in the United States for law enforcement. Those M16s and AR carbines, CAR-15s, were the thing for all the SWAT teams. And Colt realized they had a really good opportunity to develop a 9mm submachine gun that could carry over, copy all of the same controls and handling as the M16 variants that all of these SWAT teams were already using, and maybe then they could take part of the market back from, well, largely the MP5 that had dominated it. So in the mid-1980s, Colt's senior engineer, a guy named Henry Tatro, starts working on making a 9mm AR. And they start with a Colt XM177, that's the little 10.5-inch barreled 5.56 carbine collapsing stock, a gun that looks very much like this, except in 5.56, and they converted it to 9mm. Originally, with their prototype, they used just standard Uzi magazines, double stack, double feed, 25 and 32 round mags. They converted the gun to simple open bolt blowback firing. They actually put a grip safety on it, which is kind of interesting, and gave that a whirl. And there were a number of problems with it. There were certainly some drop safety concerns as a result of it being an open bolt gun. This is the classic drop safety thing that I feel like I talk about in every submachine gun video that I do, where you drop the gun on the buttstock and the bolt will bounce open, catch around, slam it forward, and fire it. Well, in this case, Colt's solution to that problem was to make the guns closed bolt firing, which I think is really a better design choice anyway. It allows for much better, much more controllable, single shot semi-auto firing. That should be the default for most police use anyway. So they make a number of changes. They change it to closed bolt firing. They increase the weight of the buffer. The original prototypes ran at something like 1200 RPM, which is really too fast. They were able to drop that down to something in the realm of 8, maybe 900, maybe 700 rounds a minute. 9mm submachine gun rates of fire are kind of hard to generalize because there really is a wide variety of 9mm ammunition out there of different powers, and different ammo will run at different rates in the same gun. But anyway, they managed to drop the rate of fire down a solid 30 or 40%, change it to closed bolt firing, and they come up with essentially this. Now, there are a few updates to this that were added a little bit after initial production began, but let's go ahead and take a closer look, and I'll show you what the Colt SMG was. Let's go ahead and start with some markings. We've got the Colt logo, Colt name. The designation on these is just SMG. They did have Colt numerical designations. This particular model is a 635 because it is 3-position, safe, semi, and auto. They did semi-auto versions, they did burst versions. We'll touch on some of that a little later on. We then have our serial number here. Note that it starts with HT. That is for Henry Tatro, the designer. Serial numbers on the full auto ones all start with his initials. Serial numbers on the semi-auto ones, by the way, all start with TA, the first 2 letters of his last name. One of the very deliberate things that Colt did was to make all of the controls identical to the standard M16 to promote interoperability and intertraining. So selector is the same, bolt release, bolt lock open are the same, the mag release is the same. Use that, we can pop the magazine out. The magazine itself is based on the 9mm Uzi magazines, but with a couple of changes. So these are made in, like the Uzi, 25 and 32 round capacities. Here's a regular Uzi magazine. You'll notice first off, there's a notch cut out right here. That's to interface with the regular AR pattern magazine release. And then secondly, the back of the follower has been modified to add this tab that interacts with the bolt hold open on the AR. So the Uzi does not lock open on an empty magazine. It is an open bolt gun, so you pull the bolt handle back and it locks open automatically. The SMG is a closed bolt gun, but it does lock open on an empty mag because of that tab. So these will fit, but they won't really work. This thing is one of the distinctive elements of the Colt SMG. This was actually added in 1986 as sort of a later development improvement on the system. The problem was this was blowing gas straight back into the shooter's face, whether they were left-handed or right-handed. And left-handed shooters, in addition, had the potential of getting powder particles and just gunk blown back out of the action because it is full auto pistol caliber. And so they added this deflector, both for gas and for particulate matter. And when they did that, they don't have to worry about the ejection port being smaller because it only needs to eject 9mm cases. But it does mean that the dust cover has to get shorter. And rather than make a custom new dust cover, they just cut existing dust covers short so that they'll fit in front of the buffer now. All right, let's go ahead and open this up. This disassembles just like a regular AR because for most intents and purposes, it is a regular AR. So one of the ways that it is not a standard AR system is that it has no gas system. This is simple blowback. It is still a closed bolt gun, not the prototypes, but the final production version. So we have a floating firing pin and it still uses a hammer to fire, but what used to be a gas key is now just a lug here to keep the bolt in proper alignment as it moves in the receiver, and to give the charging handle something to grab onto so that you can actually use the charging handle. Also worth pointing out that the back end of this is solid. We've got this pin. There's a nice big chunk of steel weight added in here to just add mass to the bolt carrier. That's one of the things they did to help reduce the rate of fire. Again, this is simple blowback, so the only thing holding the bolt shut when you fire is the mass of the bolt. That was increased. And I can go ahead and take out the buffer here. The buffer weight was also increased. It's got a little neoprene pad on the back to buffer the buffer when it hits the end of the buffer tube. Ew, lots of grease on it. So all of the added weight is necessary because of the simple blowback nature of the system. If we take a look at the receiver, you can see 3 pins, rolled pins, in the receiver here. Those are to hold the magazine adapter in place. With the original prototypes, this was a removable adapter. The concept was, I presume, you could return the gun to 5.56 configuration, but that proved to not be a great idea. This was intended to be a purpose-built 9mm gun. So they went to permanently mounted, or not quick detachable, magazine adapters. We've got a feed ramp in the front. The design is such that it can use the original mag catch, which means the magazine has to be basically this far back, which means you've got some open space in the front. So we've got a feed ramp here to help run cartridges up from the magazine into the back of the barrel. Note that we have 2 other extended elements here as a result. This one right here is the magazine hold open, or the bolt hold open, and it's got a finger that comes out all the way so that the magazine will engage it right there. And similarly, the ejector has to come far enough forward to kick out cases. So the ejector is built into the magazine adapter. This guy is just a different bolt hold open component from the standard 5.56 one. And of course, this is a full auto transferable gun, so it's got a full auto disconnect in here. One other thing is worth pointing out. You can see these pins are really quite shiny. Well, early on, Colt discovered that a bunch of their customers were using particularly hot submachine gun 9mm ammo in their Colt SMGs, and they were bending or breaking fire control pins as a result. And the fix for that was to replace these with stronger material, specifically stainless steel. So these pins are bright and shiny because they are now made out of stainless steel to make them strong enough. There you go. There is one Colt Model 635 9mm SMG field stripped. to Colt's disappointment, I'm sure, the SMG was never able to really take off and, well, for example, it never dethroned the MP5 as the preferred elite submachine gun of police and military units. It was a successful design. I mean, it's still in production today as a law enforcement, military, select fire carbine submachine gun, but it's never been the top dog. From the very beginning, there were intermittent reliability issues, and I think a lot of that comes from the compromise of magazine placement. There's a 5.56 size magazine well here, and you have to figure out where you're going to put a 9mm mag in it. Colt opted to put it far enough back that they could reuse the magazine catch hardware, but that means there's a fair amount of extra space in the front that the cartridges have to feed through, and that extra space just gives them an opportunity to have feed problems. This was never really an endemic thing where, you know, like one simple fix would solve all the issues. It was much more like a low-grade, continual chatter of occasional unreliability, depending on the specific geometry of the ammunition being used. Early on, for example, hollow point ammunition was particularly difficult in the SMG because, well, it's flat-faced. And again, that extra long feed surface, feed area, did it no favors. But it did get sales. Colt did make a bunch of different versions of this. This is sort of the standard version, 3-position selector. You could get it with a burst mechanism if you wanted. They made the little dinky short Colt 633 version, often called the DOE gun because the Department of Energy bought the biggest single contract of those. I actually have a video on a reproduction of the DOE gun, which is pretty darn cool. I'll link to that in the description below. They also made an integrally suppressed version. That's often referred to as the DEA version because the DEA is the most notable customer for those. That version was fairly quickly taken out of production because it just wasn't very popular, despite the fact that it also looks extremely cool. They also opened this up onto the civilian market. They made a semi-auto version, modified the fire control group to be semi-auto only, and that was available for a long time. That may still be available today. I'm honestly not sure about that one. But it has seen use, a lot of use in American law enforcement and foreign law enforcement as well. And like I said, still in production today, so can't be that bad, right? Here on the civilian market, these things are pretty darn rare because they did come about in the 1980s, so there wasn't that much time available before '86 for them to be registered as transferable guns available for civilian ownership like this one is. So big thanks to Morpheus for giving me access to this guide to film for you. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.